Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's 10-Minute Take brought to you by UST and Technology Advice. I'm Corey Knowles, and I'm going to be your host today. So we're looking at the rapid shift from traditional generative AI to agentic AI. These systems don't just generate content, they take action, plan multi-step tasks, and adapt through continuous feedback. This evolution is reshaping automation, orchestration, and governance across the enterprise. Joining us is Dr. Adnan Masood, Chief AI Architect at UST. Adnan leads UST's AI and machine learning group, where he connects cutting-edge research with industry applications. He's an engineer, a visionary, and a mentor who's deeply committed to advancing AI automation. Adnan, thanks for being here.
Great to be here.
Excellent. Well, I guess let's dive right in here. So, the benefits of agentic AI, things like efficiency and accelerated decision making, are clearly significant. But integrating agentic AI in the enterprise requires pretty careful planning. What are some of the critical success factors that early adopters should really be focused on?
Thanks for your time, Corey, and it's great to be here. I think I'll start with a simple framing that we are moving AI which talks to AI which does things. So agentic AI is not just a chatbot; it's a digital operator which actually performs and acts on behalf of the customer. So in this case, what I've seen in industry when I work with customers, the early adopters are winning when they focus really on three C's: clarity, context, and control. In terms of clarity, agentic AI should not start as a science project. And we have seen that happening, that if you bring in a trivial problem to solve with agentic AI, which doesn't have a defined business outcome, then it doesn't really show as a revenue uptick or an efficiency gain, and they fizzle out. So pick one workflow, one bottleneck, one measurable metric, which is like cycle time or resolution rate or cost to serve, something which is meaningful for the enterprise. For instance, compliance turnaround and whatever matters for the enterprise. And if you can't really measure it, don't automate it. Like that's one of the principles we follow, that clarity is really important for an enterprise implementation of agentic AI. So you have to have that as first thing. And as a winners, I'm seeing in the industry that happens a lot. The second C is the context. So agents are only as good as they can reliably see, which means high quality, diverse, well governed data. And we can't underestimate the importance of data. And it's not just data for training, but data for execution, the documents, the RAG infrastructure they are working on, the policies, the SOPs, the tickets, the product catalog, and really the real time signals they can get. So in practice, what it is about making enterprise knowledge usable. So have clean sources, current sources, and the right permissions for this context to execute. And the third important thing is control, which is, especially because we work with retail, finance, and healthcare a lot, regulated sectors, the control is pretty much a non negotiable. You have to have transparency and explainability, which are no longer nice to have. They are absolute license to operate. So, why did the agent do this? What did it use? What did it approve? Like, so that auditability has to be in place. So, these are really important aspects of agentic AI, and as how we are implementing that, we are looking at the closed loop orchestration, the plan, act, observe, and reflect cycle. So it needs to plan by chain of thought experimentation using large language models, as we see now. It act, it observe the results of those, and it reflects on this with the human in the loop or with a fully automated way. It learns from the feedback and it improves the next run. So that's the organizational and an enterprise change in how you align generative AI and agentic AI to the business value and feed it as a part of the trusted context and wrap it in with the strong guardrails. And that's how you get speed and safety.
That makes a lot of sense. What are some of the core challenges in implementing agentic AI systems, both pre-production and post-production?
Yeah, I believe the biggest shift in these challenges is that generative AI produces content, and we use that on a daily basis. But agentic AI produces consequences. So there's a significant shift in that area. So when you are thinking about challenges, they look very different before and after deployment. So if you think about pre-production challenges before you go live, usually worry about things like design complexity, right? So agent is not just one model. It's a system with model, with tools, with memory, with orchestration, with policies. It kind of combines, it's an ecosystem of things which combine together. So teams often underestimate the engineering needed to make these actions reliable, especially across multiple different steps. But on top of that, especially in pre-production challenges, evaluation is very hard than people typically expect. So we have this notion of not thinking about evals, or uh, not thinking about how we are going to evaluate the results. So how do you can't just ask like, was the answer correct? You need scenario for testing it. Did I choose the right tool? Did it follow the policy? Did it fail safely if it is an out of distribution question? So you build these test harnesses, simulations, red team cases, because what you're doing is you're validating the behavior, not just the output test. See what I'm saying? Like, because it's no longer, it's not generated text or image or audio. It's essentially an entire end-to-end scenario. So these are the pre-production tests you have to do. You also, like I talked about earlier, in security and access boundaries, that's really critical. So agentic AI is touching real systems, your emails, your tickets, your CRMs, your ERP systems, your cloud console, especially in terms of your regulated industries. So that creates a new risk surface, the control plane, the safety plane, a prompt injection, data leakage, tool misuse, or permissioning. All of those things can happen, and an agent have to operate with least privilege and very clear constraints. So these are the things you have to measure. This is a major challenge to measure when it comes to uh, pre-production challenge. But in terms of post-production challenge, once it goes live, the challenge now shift to operations. How do you measure drift and change? Right. So enterprise systems change. I don't think the tool sets you're using last week has not evolved or in some shape or form, whether it's SOPs, your policies have changed, your tools have changed, your data has changed. So even the user behavior changes. So agent who has worked great last month can quietly degrade its performance this month. So unless you are monitoring it and updating it. So these are the post-production challenges we see in agentic AI working with our customers. It also has this issue of compounding errors. So agent can fail one step at a time, and then those small errors cascade up. So this is different than just rerunning the prompt. This is exactly why you need the timeouts, the retry logic, which is robust, rollback plans, and the guardrails, which can stop these bad cascading chains much earlier. And that helps against having compounding errors. And the last thing I would like to say is, which is critical, and we don't deploy any system without it, is observability. You need traces, you need logging, you need tracing, you need what did what was the plan, what it observed, why it chose the action it chose. So, because agents are all about actionability, the operations team can now debug and improve it like any other critical system. So, this is the challenges, like I said, in a nutshell, are huge as compared to just having generation. And pre production is about proving the capability safely. And post production is about sustainable, reliable execution under change.
Wow. That makes a lot of sense. It's really fascinating too. So I guess from there, as organizations look to scale their agentic AI practices, how do they manage and monitor the risks? How do they build trust and operational autonomy?
Corey, that is a core question because autonomy, like you said, is without governance is just risk at scale. You're just scaling the risk, right? And in order to manage the risk and build trust, I recommend thinking in two different tracks. So, risk controls and earned autonomy. So, what are the risk controls? You build a safety stack, policy as code. So, have rules which agents have to follow. Least privilege access, only allow things, the minimum permissions, that things as an agents can only get the minimum permissions which are needed. So no broad admin access. It can't just go ahead and delete your production database and do something malicious around that. Like, it doesn't have those permissions. Having human in the loop where it matters is really, really important, especially for the sensitive actions, human involved actions, whether it's payment, customer impacting changes, access grants, regulated communication. All of that, human in the loop is really critical. Having a strong observability, I think I've discussed that earlier, continuous monitoring, having a kill switch and containment. These are the risk controls. So the first track in terms of risk control, have a safety stack. And these are the things I've just talked about in terms of autonomy. Now, In terms of the second part of it, building an autonomy ladder, which helps you with trust. And trust, again, doesn't come from a slide deck, right? It comes from evidence which you provide. So, how do you scale that autonomy? In order to scaling autonomy, you need to assist, recommend, you need to execute with approval. So, the agent acts, but the human has to confirm it up till a point when the confidence in the capability of the agent goes up. Execute with guardrails. So, bounded action inside strict policies and having a higher autonomy in low risk zones. So, you start in a sandbox, internal operations, have a wave style rollout where you have reversible workflows. So, those are some of the things which help you have this build that autonomy ladder for earned autonomy. And I would conclude by saying that don't start with full autonomy, of course. Start with provable autonomy. So your trust is the consistent outcomes and transparency and the safe failure. So some of these things actually what trust looks like: having consistent outcomes, having transparent outcomes, and having a safe failure mechanism.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's 10-minute take. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us as we unpacked this shift toward agentic AI and what organizations need to be doing to prepare. Before we wrap, though, Adnan, where can people go to learn more or continue the conversation about UST?
Thanks, Corey, for this conversation. It was very meaningful and very timely. The best place to start is UST.com. You can explore our AI solutions and services across different industries we work on and see how we approach data, automation, and governance, especially end to end governance. And if you are actively evaluating agentic AI, my advice is start with one high value workflow, build the safety stack, and scale what you can measure. We would love to partner with you on that journey.
Smart. I love it. Well, Adnan, thank you so much for joining us today. And thanks again to everyone watching. We'll see you back here next time.